Hello, my name is Christie Lagally. I'm the founder and CEO of Rebellious Foods. At Rebellious, we research, design, and build the next generation of plant-based meat production methods and equipment in order to make plant-based meat products available and affordable to everyone. Today, I'm going to share with you the production challenges of making plant-based meat and how we've accelerated those during the pandemic. We have a diverse audience here today, so let's level set on the types of products we consider plant-based meat. I'll be talking about the production of meat analogs typically made from vegetable protein and meant to mimic the taste and function of meat. Many of you may be quite familiar with products like the Impossible Burger or the Beyond Burger, but this industry has an over 120-year-old history in the United States. So perhaps you've also tried other products like the Grano sausages or Veggielona plant-based meat of the 1960s. We've been manufacturing plant-based meat for a long time. But as you may know, compared to the days of Veggielona, the plant-based meat sector has taken off in popularity. For the first time, we now see massive unmet demand. And to understand production, we need to understand the state of supply versus demand in this sector. By 2030, the market demand for plant-based meat will reach over $85 billion a year, and some estimates expect that to be considerably higher. Yet global production of plant-based meat will only reach about 20 billion, or 1/4 of the demand, even with a CAGR of about 14%. Hence, projected demand will far outpace sales in the next decade. In fact, the US meat industry produces over 108 billion pounds of animal meat each year. Yet the cumulative amount of plant-based meat in the industry clocks in at less than 0.5% of that volume. This means the vast majority of people don't have access to meat replacements, despite the fact that they are trying to reduce their meat consumption for human health, climate change, animal welfare, and now even pandemic prevention reasons. And yet, demand for plant-based meat is expected to rise even higher. As more people on the planet are impacted by the fallout of industrial meat production, including dwindling public and personal health, climate change, agricultural pollution, and animal cruelty issues, we see a continued rise in the interest in alternatives to animal meat. And even in the middle of this pandemic, we have come face to face with the fact that intensive animal agriculture is one of the most looming threats for the next global pandemic. And now global leaders are speaking out that we must replace meat on a large scale, with this call from Bill Gates claiming that we should move to 100% meat replacements. And yet beef emissions are only half of the greenhouse gas emissions from the meat industry. In fact, the same amount comes from the production of chicken, pork, and turkey combined. We ought to replace as much meat as possible. So we have an unprecedented situation here. The world is demanding meat alternatives, and yet all we can do is produce enough plant-based meat for about 1 meal per person per year. That's like advocating for people to not drive their cars to prevent greenhouse gas emissions, and then saying they can only use public transit for about 1 day per year. Plant-based meat, as a solution to global problems, is hamstrung by low plant-based meat production. To further understand, we have to dive a bit deeper into the history of plant-based meat production. First, nearly all plant-based meat is made in one of two ways. With some exceptions, I'm not claiming the complete industry. For the most part, about 80, maybe even 90% of products are made via what's called mix and form methods, and many more are made via high moisture extrusion. And to understand why we make plant-based meat in this way, let's go back to the beginning of manufactured meat analogs. One of the first meat analogs sold commercially was Protos, canned for sale in about 1899. From there, products like Nut Photo and Zoe Burger were available in the 1930s, and more prepared products like Choplets in the 1940s. By the 1960s, we see products that we recognize today as plant-based meats, such as Bacos. By the 1970s, more popular brands like Morningstar emerged, and high-quality products from Ives were being produced in Canada. By the 1990s and 2000s, Boca, Tofurky, and Gardberger all came forward with excellent products, and we see many, many more today on supermarket shelves. What's interesting to note about this timeline is the affiliated manufacturing advancements that these products represent. In 1899, canning made plant-based protos possible simply because it was safe to sell food in cans. In the 1920s, the isolation of protein from plants started to make more specific products with high protein ingredients possible. This method of mix and form of ingredients, including isolated proteins for making finished goods, allowed for products that were nutritionally similar to manufactured meat products for the first time. By the 1940s and 50s, the ability to start spinning structured protein or to structure protein via spinning or use sausage making methods led to the rise of products like Veggelona and continued to develop from there to produce products like Bacos, which was actually later then produced by another advancement, low moisture protein extrusion to make textured vegetable protein, now commonly known as TVP today. Many products were simply defined by our ability to produce and distribute them, such as these canned plant-based meat products, some which are still sold today. Likewise, simply mimicking the current meat production method for plant-based meat production proved quite effective for many products such as hot dogs and sausage. But companies like Worthington's were determined to advance the cause of plant-based meat replacement starting in the 1950s with manufacturing methods like protein spinning for better plant-based meat texture. General Mills took protein spinning to a new level with dedicated research and manufacturing facilities for spun fibrous protein products. But much of this method was replaced with the advent of low moisture extrusion to make textured vegetable proteins so commonly used today. ADM and many other companies make a wide variety of high quality TVP products to use in plant-based meat products. Once developed, low moisture extrusion was quickly incorporated into that historical mix and form method for the industry had already used. And this method of making high quality plant-based meat products has lasted until today, with products from Beyond, Impossible, and even Rebellyous products made in the same way. Products from using mix and form with TVP make up much of the industry today. Nevertheless, advancements have continued in fibrous structuring of protein using high moisture extrusion, leading to even more meat-like products. Given that mix and form is the most common and most cost-effective way for producers to make these plant-based meat products, let's take a look at what this production consists of. For the most part, today's mix and form plant-based meat factories are those that also make animal meat. Our veggie burgers and plant-based nuggets are made on the same or similar equipment as their animal-based meat counterparts, and often in the same facility. The off-the-shelf equipment most typically used are bowl choppers, tumblers, and continuous fryers for coated products like chicken. While these tools can make plant-based meat products, as they have been since the days of Worthington's hot dogs, they aren't very efficient at doing so and introduce many bottlenecks when used for making plant-based meat. So let me explain why. Industrial meat processing equipment was designed to do exactly that, process meat. Rotating blade equipment was designed to break down the structure in animal carcasses into malleable doughs and formed into hamburgers and chicken nuggets. This subtractive processing on the left, from chicken to chicken nugget, is what this equipment was designed to do well. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the production of plant-based meat, where ingredients are brought from many sources and are carefully brought together to create a cohesive structure. While the forces imparted by meat processing equipment can mix these ingredients together, the equipment is imprecise and problematic for this additive manufacturing method on the right, of which plant-based meat dough is made, and which this equipment was never designed to process. In fact, any processor of plant-based meat undoubtedly has a list similar to ours at Rebellyous. Essentially, that off-the-shelf equipment is batch processed, requires excessive labor, introduces food safety concerns, has heating and cooling issues, introduces more difficult sanitation cycles when compared to use of animal, when it's compared for its use of producing animal-based meat. As a result, we see in the market low production despite high demand. But we also need to address the underlying myth of scaling in the plant-based meat industry. In order to make plant-based meat cost competitive, many advocates believe it's just a matter of scale. This belief is that if we are just as big as the US meat industry, that economies of scale would solve the high cost of plant-based meat production. This is partially true, as economies of scale usually do bring savings. But the plant-based meat industry needs to compete one-on-one with animal-based meat counterparts. And as a result, we have to understand the barriers of cost-competitive COGS for meat analogs. Let's first talk about this scaling myth for bringing down the cost of plant-based meat. On a per pound price basis, the cost to produce plant-based meat remains considerably higher than animal-based meat for three reasons. First, plant-based meat ingredients are 2.5 times the cost of animal-based meat, or plant-based meat are 2.5 times the cost of animal-based meat ingredients. Until this changes, it will be difficult to compete with animal meat. And here, the economies of scale will help some, but it will be difficult to close a 100 to 200% gap in price. Second, per our discussion on additive manufacturing, there are more steps and higher labor costs to making plant-based meat. This is a per pound price problem and not necessarily impacted by scaling. Hence, economies of scaling do not change the fundamental work to be done on each pound of product. And third, equipment currently used for making plant-based products is used for longer because there are more steps and wears faster due to the difference in material properties. Hence, such equipment poses a high capital cost, high amortization cost in the equipment of this equipment in the COGS of plant-based meat. This is also a per pound price problem and is not necessarily impacted by scaling or economies of scale. So, how do we even solve this problem? We look to the innovation that the meat industry has already succeeded at. Manufacturing technology and automation is what makes chicken cheap and readily available, and has done so since the onslaught of industrial manufacturing and processing in the 1950s and 60s. But nothing like this exists in the plant-based meat industry. We are changing that. Rebellyous Foods is designing and deploying a new generation of equipment to make plant-based meat faster, higher quality, and less expensive. By doing so, we can address the price differential of plant-based meat production through addressing manufacturing cost, which is unnecessarily high due to a lack of manufacturing technology applied to this industry today. For example, most plant-based chicken nuggets can be produced at just under $3 a pound, a far cry from the competitor, and the chicken nugget at about half the price. With the Rebellyous production systems, we are poised to make Rebellyous products at the same cost of animal-based chicken. So I'd like to share a little bit about our work at Rebellyous. Unfortunately, as an early stage startup, our work is still being patented and prototyped. So I can't show you the new equipment, but I'd love to share our process for building a platform for the next generation of plant-based meat production equipment. Rebellyous is building a new platform for mix and form production of plant-based meat. This platform has come out of 24 months of research to define the problems, including bottlenecks and process effectiveness, energy usage, tack time, labor hours, and sanitation, safety, and logistical needs. We've documented and prioritized these issues for further research and design. From this enormous database of process and equipment research, we then established a new design philosophy that directs our platform. This includes, but is not limited to, continuous production, superior sanitary design, and low capital cost scalability of equipment. Finally, over the last 12 months, we have designed novel production equipment and processes that address these philosophies and bottlenecks. In our research and production facility in West Seattle, we not only produce Rebellyous chicken nuggets, patties, and tenders, but we also use this facility as a living laboratory for deploying our new production equipment and methods and simultaneously bringing down the cost of goods sold for production of our products. As a result, the Rebellyous platform will reduce the production cost by 60%, getting us at or near the price of chicken, increases production of a facility by 2 to 3 times, can dramatically improve the quality of products, and makes the technology scalable for lower cost facility replication. Not only are we winning the consumer market, but also the food production market, as our technology allows us to scale plant-based meat to meet the overwhelming market demand. So to wrap up, I'd like to offer an extension to the plant-based meat production timeline from before. From the mix and form processes of today, the next generation will certainly be our new, quote, Mach 1 production system being deployed this year. From there, I see unique opportunities for our manufacturing technology research to solve even more problems like the constant battle for cleaner labels or protein structuring that includes all ingredients and doesn't require as much post-processing. And these are just a handful of the opportunities for production technology solutions to make plant-based meat and to make the plant-based meat industry not just capable of meeting extraordinary demand, but also as a genuine solution to replace meat for all the social justice reasons our society has come to value. Thank you so much for letting me share this journey with you.